If someone asked you how many times you lie on a given day, how would you answer without lying? Some studies indicate that we lie up to an amazing 200 times per day. Others suggest that it is near 10 times that amount. We lie for numerous reasons, both good and bad. Sometimes to protect others, sometimes just to save our own skins. But no matter why people lie, many of us are involved in activities that require us to have access to truthful information. If you're a lawyer, CEO, or accountant, it doesn't matter why people lie. What matters is the truth. Provide you with the field experience of highly trained professional lie detectors so that you can better detect whether other people are telling the truth, as well as how to ask the right questions to get people to reveal their lies. One reason we often fail to detect lies has to do with the fact that it's difficult for us to precisely interpret what others are communicating to us, for a number of reasons. First, we find it hard to concentrate on verbal and nonverbal communication simultaneously. When we communicate with one another, we employ two kinds of communication. Verbal, that is, with our speech, as well as nonverbal, for example, using body language. However, we find it hard to discern the communication styles of others, since our perception of the world constantly teeters between being either dominated by the visual or by the auditory. Thus, when we are communicating with someone, we focus our energy either on listening closely to what they say or watching for clues in their body language that might give us insight into their intentions or motivations. Unfortunately, however, we aren't very good at doing both simultaneously, and we therefore often miss crucial elements of people's communication. Secondly, communication is difficult to interpret because single behaviors can actually have many causes and be interpreted in more than one way. What does it mean, for example, when your conversation partner breaks eye contact with you? You might suspect that they're unable to look you in the eye because they're deceiving you. Yet again, it could also simply be that they have bad manners or lack the self-esteem, confidence, or social sophistication required to hold eye contact. So, how do you know which it is? Well, you can't. Humans are bad at lie detection because we have biases preventing us from evaluating information objectively. Have you ever watched a football game with a die-hard fan of one of the teams? Chances are there was a lot of cheering, some yelling, and maybe even a little cursing. How did they perceive the events on the field? They probably judged the referee's calls based on whether they helped or hurt their favorite team. This slanted, non-neutral perception of events is called a bias. We can't help that we're biased, and, in fact, biases are very much a part of who we are. Since they originate from our experiences and personal beliefs, they are quite difficult to avoid. Your football fanatic friend isn't aware that his perceptions are biased. He simply feels that he's expressing himself honestly. An outside observer, however, who sees the referee's call and your friend's biased reaction, can see that these biases are indeed there. But what does bias have to do with the lying? Our biases dictate how trustworthy we believe people to be. In other words, we naturally believe that certain people will not lie to us. For example, the leader of a satanic cult in California was accused of molesting about 60 children based solely on the accusation of one 13-year-old girl. The cult leader, of course, denied it all. In spite of the Satanist's steadfast denial, everybody was convinced that this girl was telling the truth, until she was finally interviewed by one of the authors, where she admitted that everything was completely fabricated. But why did people believe her? In part, it's because the people she told her story to felt that little girls were more trustworthy than Satanists. This bias caused them to approach the accusation with their minds already slanted in one direction, thus causing them to miss her lie. The moral of the story? Don't underestimate the influence of biases on your decision-making. Don't be fooled by truthful behavior. Lies can be hidden within. As you've learned so far, we are naturally not very good at detecting lies. As if that weren't enough, liars also use tricks to mask their dishonesty. If you know how they accomplish this, then you stand a better chance of resisting their manipulation. Often, liars will use our own biases against us and imitate truthful behavior. That is, behavior that we normally associate with honest people in order to sneak their lies past our defenses. One way they accomplish this is by peppering their lies with other information we feel is reasonable. Imagine, for example, that you're a teacher and you accuse a student of cheating on an important exam. They might respond by telling you, "I'm an honest person. I wouldn't want to jeopardize my studies by cheating." Sounds pretty reasonable, right? Inevitably, part of you will even think that it sounds like something you might say in the same situation. That's because we're naturally biased to believe people rather than doubt them. We look for reasons to believe people, and sometimes they provide us with them. Luckily, we can circumvent this pitfall by simply ignoring truthful behavior altogether when trying to determine whether to believe someone. For instance, when someone offers direct and spontaneous answers to your questions, it's not necessarily to their credit. They might just be well-prepared liars trying to emulate truthful behavior. So, even though that student's reply seems convincing, it's actually irrelevant. The issue isn't whether they would jeopardize their studies, but whether or not they cheated. A good way to respond to these kinds of statements is to acknowledge what they said, perhaps by saying, "I've heard this about you," before you address the actual topic once more by asking something like, "What happened during that exam?" Only the answer to this question matters. While it might seem counterintuitive, excluding truthful behavior from your decision-making is crucial when detecting lies. Liars try to avoid lying bluntly by either not answering questions directly or not answering at all. If you've ever watched a US court drama, you've probably heard the question, "Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" This oath actually highlights 3 different types of lies, all of which we'll explore in the next blinks. The first, called lies of omission, deal with the whole truth. They're the easiest lies for liars to tell since they're less direct than other types of mistruths. Lies of omission are lies where people simply leave out crucial details of their story rather than lying directly. One way liars do this is by simply skipping over compromising details. For example, if someone goes on a business trip and does something that might get them in trouble, they'll simply gloss over those details when recounting their trip to family and friends. They also might generalize their story in order to avoid lying directly. Luckily, you can identify lies of omission if you hear lots of qualifiers, such as words like basically, probably, usually, or mostly. So if you ask someone how their business trip was, they might respond that they mostly just stayed in the hotel and worked on their presentation. But what else did they do that they haven't told you? Another way people lie by omission is by electing not to answer the question at hand. When a liar feels cornered, they may try to buy time by repeating or reinterpreting the question, perhaps by claiming they don't understand or by referring to earlier statements they've made. These tactics all indicate that they want to avoid having to lie directly. Ultimately, if you ask for information and people don't supply it, they probably have a reason. A liar might try to hide their mistruths in a web of details or by appealing to their upstanding reputation. The next type of lie, called lies of commission, deals with the tell the truth part of the oath. Lies of commission occur when liars feel the need to increase their credibility in order to avoid revealing the truth. When a simple lie wouldn't be believable enough, they embellish their lies with details in order to make them believable. For example, liars might give overly specific details about an event to cover up the truth. If you accuse them of stealing, they might spill a deluge of details about why they couldn't be suspects. They might say, "But I couldn't have stolen that money. I was at work until 3:45 and it took 12 whole minutes on the 35 bus before I got home." Another way of making a lie more credible is to dress up the lie. That is, to make a sudden shift in polite language. For example, liars might suddenly start calling you sir or ma'am, or even invoke religion by swearing to God that they are telling the truth. The last type of lie deals with telling the truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. These are lies of influence, the most powerful kind of lie. If a liar has no facts in his arsenal to combat your questions, he may choose instead to convince you of his uprightness rather than give truthful information. For example, if you suspect someone of stealing from your company, they might respond, "I'm an honest person with a reputation to keep. I've worked here for more than half of my life and am about to retire. Why should I risk my pension by stealing?" Indeed, these lies of influence are powerful and difficult to detect because they seem so reasonable. We want to believe them. Although all 3 types of lies can be difficult to catch, you can still spot them as long as you're aware of them. Lying is a stressful activity that can show up in physical responses. Think back on a situation in your childhood when you had to lie to somebody about something important. How did it feel? Did the blood rush to your head? Did you get cold, sweaty palms and dry mouth? You may have even started nervously shuffling your feet in an effort to stay calm. Why is it that we respond this way? Having to lie in the face of incriminating questions raises our stress level, which then triggers the fight or flight instinct. This powerful instinct instantly prepares your body to face threatening situations. Its roots are buried deep within the brain, and we cannot turn it off, which explains why children often try to run away from difficult situations. In addition, lying causes activity in the hands and face. When we are under stress, our blood flow is drawn away from our extremities, such as our hands, nose, and ears. This, in turn, causes these parts of our body to itch and grow cold, and our hands involuntarily move toward these areas to scratch or rub them. That's why, for example, your palms were sweaty as a child while you were struggling to lie. Furthermore, liars will also try to dissipate their anxiety in an effort to remain calm by adjusting their anchor points, or the parts of the body such as the hands, feet, and buttocks that lock us into a fixed position. CIA questioners make it more obvious when someone adjusts their anchor points by placing the people they question in a swivel chair to amplify their motion. I bet you feel lucky they weren't around to catch you in your lie.